Hey, this is Ramon, Channel South 4. Welcome to my channel. This is part of my Bible study series, and we are in Genesis chapter 18. So what's the recap? Abraham has some visitors. He is promised a son, and he intercedes for Sodom and Gomorrah. We also get Lot's descendants, and those are the Moabs and the Amorites. So let's break down the chapter. This chapter represents a continuation of the narrative from chapter 13 and will continue into chapter 19. This particular chapter can be understood on its own as a chapter about ancient guest friendship laws. And if you don't know what that is, basically in almost all ancient myths, a god will take on the guise or the avatar of a human being, and usually a helpless old lady or an old man, and the stranger will ask for food or drink or water. And because he's a stranger, you're expected to give him food and drink or water because you don't know if this person could be a god in disguise, a divinity in disguise. The reason for that is because in ancient times, there are no gas stations, okay? There are no convenience stores. And if you are traveling somewhere, especially in a desert, you need water and you need food, and so you have to rely on the kindness of others to make it from one place to another. Get it? When the visitors arrive, you see the word Lord, and this reminds me of a later Christian understanding that says that God is present whenever two of his believers get together and speak of him. So to me, that's what that makes me think of. But the number of visitors changes. So sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three. It's very unclear. In fact, the number of visitors and their identities shift in the narrative as this chapter goes on. Now, this story about three angels coming and traveling to investigate Sodom and Gomorrah actually makes me think of a popular Greek theory about their myths. So the ancient Greeks had their own theories of how their myths came into being. They didn't just believe them all outright. So what they thought is that myths were based on real events. So Zeus was a great king. The other gods and goddesses were his children. And the children and the princess got into trouble. These stories, these great events and great deeds that these people did would be misremembered and be added to over time. So over time, these stories would be embellished and they would become the great myths that we know. So it is very easy to think that these three visitors could have been knights or warriors sent by a king or a lord, because that's the term that's being used in the chapter in the English, to check out the rumors of a town or a set of towns that were mistreating travelers, okay, and strangers. Remember, because guest friendship law is a very important thing in ancient communities of around Mesopotamia. Basically, that they were there to investigate, and so basically when people would talk about the story, but hey, remember that time that these three knights came through here and they went and destroyed and burnt this city, would change into, remember when these three angels came and destroyed the city that was harassing travelers and committing all these horrible crimes on strangers. Get it? Okay? So that's how that would be remembered and how the story would change over time. Now, in the story, Sarah gets told something and she laughs because she gets told she's going to have a child. And who Sarah is talking to, remember how the narrative kind of changes focus. So depending on who's translating and who's doing the interpretation, who is talking to her when she laughs and who she's responding to can change. Okay? And as such, translators have been known to insert text, a word or a phrase to help explain who she's talking to. But these words are missing from the original manuscript. And they do this in other places in the Bible. So a term or expression that's just untranslatable, a text that is smudged on whatever their source material is, fragments that are just missing a piece, and there's no other translation or no other source material that has that word. they'll just put whatever word will make sense. Or sometimes sentences don't translate into the English perfectly or to whatever language they're translating to. And so they'll insert words to make it coherent with the language that they're translating into. But at the end of this, remember that Abraham intercedes for Sodom and Gomorrah. And this has two implications. One is the intercession of prayer. Okay, so the proof that prayer works and that intercession is a good thing, and that there is a need for prayer, and that prayer for another is an act of righteousness. It implies that God can change his mind. Okay, so remember that. From the Catholic Judaic tradition, there is no destiny, there is no fate. Those are pagan ideas from other religions. There is fate in Greek religion, okay? There is destiny in Hindu religion, okay? But there is not fate and destiny in Judaism and Christianity. Well, at this point it's just Judaism. So there's no predestination stuff going on here. People are chosen based on the merits of their character right now, or based on just simply God's grace. So you can be chosen by God's grace, or you can be chosen on your merits, but God chooses. In fact, we're going to get into that later on with the kids and grandkids of Abraham, but we're not there yet. What is prayer, though? So here, prayer is a conversation with God Almighty. So it's a conversation. So prayer is not necessarily just asking for something, it's having a dialogue, it's having a conversation with God and talking to God. The idea of wrestling with God comes to mind. So this is not simply just praise, this is also talking and like talking things out. So like talking to a really good friend. That's what that is. Someone that you respect, though, and that's above you, obviously. We also get, remember, God can change his mind, so we also get divine self-reflection, deliberation, and investigation. So the God of the Old Testament is slightly interpreted or understood differently in the way that we understand God in the New Testament. Definitely differently than how God is understood in the Quran, okay? And differently than how modern atheists interpret what we understand as God. God here can think and can reconsider things and can analyze. You know, so God is capable of all these things. Okay, so just to be clear. And then we get into the intercession itself. And Abraham just starts kind of like, what if there's only 100 good people? Okay, well, what if there's only 50 good people? What if there's only 20 good people? And like finding it down to what if there's only 10? And that gets to the statement here that 10 righteous people can spare a city from destruction. And it implies that there were not even 10 righteous people in either Sodom or Gomorrah. Now, we're going to have to talk about populations in ancient cities, but these are not huge populations, okay? A city back then, we're not talking 100,000 people, okay? Think of more like what we would consider a small town. And get your mind around the fact that things are going to be a little bit different than we're used to. And next up is Sodom and Gomorrah, and we're going to hit some controversial topics, I guess. All right, peace, like, and subscribe. Comment down below.